I'm here to talk to you today about prayer in school. According to the Huffington Post, Florida Governor Rick Scott signed one of the most controversial bills to pass in the House and Senate. SB 98 permits school districts to allow students to read inspirational messages of their choosing at assemblies and sporting events. They say that although the word prayer was explicitly struck from the bill's language, the legislation is largely seen as a way for the state to sneak in revision into public schools. Unfortunately, critics of the bill say that this will probably never happen because schools are afraid that they're going to set themselves and the state up for lawsuits. They say that it violates the separation of church and state. During a committee meeting, the House sponsor of the bill, Representative Charles Van Zandt, said when we took school prayer out of school, disciplinary cases went up. We had a lot more school vandalism. We had a lot more disrespect for schools, including the physical plant as well as school personnel, teachers, and principals. Our country and our school system were founded on biblical principles, and to take God out of the equation, well, that's just a shame. Forerunner.com states that the removal of prayer from our schools was a violation of the third commandment, which commands us not to take the name of the Lord in vain. They say that by the judicial act of forbidding invocation, the court audaciously elevated a secularized system of education beyond the authority, reach, and blessing of God himself. Worse than taking the Lord's name in vain is treating it with contempt, denying its rightful place and stripping it from public use and even from the lips of children. Jesus' own expressed desire, let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, was also violated by these judges, many of whom come from Christian homes. Forerunner.com also posted that America's moral decline rapidly accelerated following one event, the U.S. Supreme Court's removal of prayer from our nation's schools. On June 25, 1962, 39 million students were forbidden to do what they and their predecessors had been doing for many years, publicly calling upon the name of the Lord at the beginning of each school day. According to the Orlando Sentinel, current state law allows schools to set aside 2 minutes during the school day for silent prayer or meditation. Students are also allowed to have organized prayer events before school or after school. Federal law does not restrict religious student messages at student gatherings or graduations, so long as the student chosen to deliver the message was not selected because of his or her religious preferences. Seminole County School Board Chairwoman Tina Calderon said, "If it's not broken, why fix it?" But unfortunately, it isn't true. Many schools do allow prayer, but most do not. And all it takes is one person protesting to put an end to it. According to schoolprayerinamerica.com, in colonial America, homeschooling in the schools run by churches were very common. The first settlers in America felt it was important that children learn to read so they could read their Bibles. Learning right from wrong and developing good moral character were considered as important as learning the 3 R's. School prayer was a natural part of the Pilgrim's school life. The school textbooks taught Bible verses, and daily school prayer was a natural part of the school day. Schools continued to be run by mostly Christian churches until the 1890s, when states started to take control. By 1900, many of their textbooks were in use, and they all had Bible quotes in them. At the beginning of the 20th century, most classes started their day with the Pledge of Allegiance, a prayer, and reading from the Bible. Many churches began to turn their schools over to the state-run educational system. America had one of the best school systems in the world, but in 1925, the newly formed ACLU paid a teacher in Tennessee to teach evolution. Bible creation had always been taught, and teaching evolution was against the law in Tennessee. Although the ACLU lost this case, it set in motion the teaching of science as more of a priority. Within 4 decades, the laws were reversed, so now it's illegal to teach creation and mandatory to teach evolution. In just 4 decades, it's changed. The ACLU started using the courts to change school policy. In 1948, the Supreme Court used the separation of church and state argument to outlaw time for school prayer. In 1962, the Supreme Court again declared that prayer in school was unconstitutional. In 1963, the Warren Court stopped schools from allowing Bible reading in classes, and in 1980, the Supreme Court declared that posting the 10 Commandments in the school classroom violates the U.S. Constitution. Did you know that today many Americans think that the First Amendment actually says the separation of church and state? And it doesn't. The courts and the media will often refer to a ruling as being in violation of the separation of church and state, You might be surprised to learn that these words do not appear in the First Amendment anywhere in the Constitution. Actually, what the First Amendment says is, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abiding the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The word separation of church and state can actually be traced back to a letter from Thomas Jefferson. He wrote it in response to a letter from the Danbury Baptist Association of Connecticut. They had voiced some concerns about religious freedoms, and Jefferson wrote a letter to them in which he added the phrase separation of church and state. Jefferson was simply underscoring the First Amendment as a guardian of the people's religious freedom from government interference. Notice the First Amendment puts restrictions only on the government, not on the people. When Thomas Jefferson wrote this letter, he never expected the words separation of church and state to be taken out of context, but it's exactly what the courts have done. Although the words separation of church and state do not appear in the U.S. Constitution, they do appear in the Constitution of the USSR communist state. Joseph Stalin, an evil communist dictator, realized that America would be hard to defeat due to its patriotism and strong morality. He didn't like this, and he said if communism could undermine the morality of American culture, it would crumble from within. In 1958, the book The Naked Communist was published. It listed 45 communist goals to overthrow America. Number 28 says, eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground of violence, the principle of separation of church and state. In 1963, Madeleine O'Hare, an atheist communist activist, took her 12-year-old son to court to get prayer removed from school. She was represented by an ACLU lawyer. It only took them 5 years to reach goal number 28. Today, American student and government-run schools rank near the bottom of other industrialized nations. Since God was taken out of our schools, teen pregnancy and the crime rate have gone up. Prisons around the nation are now busting at the seams. America is crumbling just like Joseph Stalin said that it would. We have turned our back on the Christian American values that our country was founded on. Art Thomas of supernaturaltruth.com said, can we blame the shootings on taking prayer out of schools? No, not really. We have shootings in churches. We just have to close our eyes, grit our teeth, and pray. Just do it silently. God can still hear you, just not everybody else. True believers only care if God hears them anyway. I'm very fortunate and thankful to work in a private Christian school where my teenage son and my 3 oldest grandchildren will attend this year. We have prayer and Bible reading every day. I just wish kids in public schools were allowed to do this if they wanted to. That's why I'm in favor of prayer being allowed in public schools. Thank you.